Focus story right now. India and China have agreed to end a lengthy standoff at Doklam. The breakthrough was reached by diplomatic talks, and it comes ahead of Prime Minister Modi's trip to China for the BRICS Summit in the first week of September. In a statement, the Ministry of External Affairs said that in the recent weeks, India and China have maintained diplomatic communication on Doklam.
印度边防部队非法越过中印西金段已定边界，进入中国洞朗地区。中方通过外交渠道多次向印方提出交涉，向国际社会说明事实真相，阐明中方严正立场和明确要求，敦促印方立即将越界边防部队撤回边界印方一侧。同时，中国军队采取有力应对措施，维护国家领土主权和合法权益。 8月28日下午14点30分许，印方将越界人员和设备全部撤回边界印方一侧。
I think this is a development that is to be welcomed. It is significant, and we hope that the disengagement protocol would be carried out in a mutually satisfactory and agreed manner, because that would pave the way for Prime Minister Modi to attend the BRICS Summit in China in the next few days.
The question of tension was answered by our Defence Minister Jetli. He told China clearly, India is not 1962. And therefore the Chinese have realized that the Indian military is in a better position in Doklam, is better prepared along the border. So there was tension, but I think there was more tension on Chinese side, and both have agreed to disengage.
आज उसको मालूम हुआ कि नहीं, दिल्ली में भी एक सरकार है, एक ताकतवर जो है, जहां लीडरशिप है, उन्होंने बहुत थ्रेटन किया, बहुत कुछ किया, लेकिन जिस तरीके के मैं दाद देना चाहूंगा हमारे आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री, हमारे जो है हमारे रक्षा मंत्री, हमारे विदेश मंत्री और जितने भी लोग हैं, जिन्होंने इसको डील किया है, आर्मी को मैं करना चाहूंगा, बड़ी पेशेंस के साथ उन्होंने डील किया है, और जैसे होता है सत्य में भी जय थे, सत्य के अंत में विजय होती है.
China is saying that they'll continue patrolling in Doklam area. That's okay, because we also have been doing patrolling in Doklam area. In fact, when I was posted there a long time back, from 73 to 74, I stayed in Doklam for about 2 nights. So patrolling and dominating area, it is continuing. So if they continue patrolling there in that area, that's okay. But they should restrict to their area and not enter Doklam.
Well, let's go across to my colleague Ashish Singh joining us with the latest on this big development between India and China. Ashish, 2 months of this hard work, it seems finally has paid off. It seems that the situation at Doklam will now come back to normalcy, status quo as it was before the month of June when the standoff began.
Well, that's right. Finally, the two major power, elephant and dragon, have shaken hands together, and the truce has been, which was sought for almost 2.5 months, has finally been achieved between India and China. I'm told by the top sources in the army headquarters that the truce was struck yesterday late evening, and the information was passed on to the Indian Army, the Eastern Command, and also to the Northern Command and the DGMO's office to start withdrawing in a mutually phase-by-phase, step-by-step manner. That began today early morning. Quickly after that, I'm told that the reinforcement, the temporary structures that were built, those are also being broken. More towards the India side is what the structures are currently, because the Indian forces in huge number had moved in a span of last 1.5 months to ensure that China is actually given that eyeball-to-eyeball contact, which at several posts we see. Apart from that, I'm told that the military channel talks had failed in the second week of August, and this has been achieved. The truce has been achieved between the Indian and Chinese top level of government officials, and that's the reason why it was quietly done. No one got to know about it, and it has finally been conveyed to army. I'm told that it's going to take around 24 to 48 hours, maximum 72 hours to completely withdraw and de-escalate the tension between India and China in the Doklam issue. As far as the Chinese patrolling aspect is concerned, this is how the Chinese media is basically twisting. I mean, it's okay. You can understand. I mean, we can take it at the international level. If someone who has not been able to win over you is trying to make some noise, that's understood. That's not a problem, because patrolling was never an issue that was raised by India. It was a road construction in the disputed area between China and Bhutan. So road construction has been stopped. That's one of the major terms and conditions that was put in the truce agreement between India and China. It's an informal one. There is no official document that has been signed. But what is important here is the way China is still projecting, specifically in the media domain. So that doesn't matter, because India had always protested against the road construction, which would have jeopardized the, to a certain extent, would have endangered the India's security scenario, would have been physically become more visible for the Chinese forces. So that was the main issue. As far as the patrolling is concerned, the Indian forces have been there and will continue to be there.
Right. Also, somewhere, Ashish, you would agree that this entire standoff has hurt China far much more than it's hurt India, because one can also make out in the language that has now come out from the spokesperson there of the Chinese Foreign Ministry, who says that I'm pleased to confirm that trespassing Indian personnel have all pulled back to the Indian side of the boundary. And the fact is that while they continue to speak in a different language and how they will have control of the Doklam issue, the fact is that the standoff has been called, and both the countries, as India had said, as Foreign Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj had said, that this will only happen if both countries mutually decide to retreat to status quo. The standoff will be called off. And that's happened just before Prime Minister Modi's visit to China for the BRICS Summit.
That's right, Akshay. Just exactly what Foreign Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj and also the official statement from the Minister of External Affairs has come. It has been done mutually. It's okay if the Chinese media, they still want to continue to trump their drum. It's okay, no problem, because they have to show something to their own people. Remember, we live in a different country. We are a democratic country where media speaks independently of government, but that's not the case there. Specifically, where you have a dictatorship rule, they will obviously have to, media follows what exactly the government says. And in the case where we see the Doklam, in the time period rather, we witnessing the Doklam standoff, just few months away from now is the local elections. So the political leadership wants to show some brave face, put up brave face before their own people.
Correct. Playing it to the galleries back at home in China, isn't it? Ashish, request you to please stay with us. We'll take a listen into some inputs we have. We'll come back to you for more.
Both the countries, being strategic partners, neighbors, and large developing countries, work with sincerity, guided by the principles and parameters of the 2005 agreement between the two prime ministers, to ensure that these complex border-related issues reach a final settlement that would serve the interest not only of China and India, but also of the region as a whole.
So I was happy to hear about the MEA press release. It's removal of tension in that area, certainly a step in the right direction. But I'm a bit puzzled by the Chinese reaction. If it was mutually agreed, how can they say that they will continue with patrolling in that area? If what they say is true, then of course it's, even if it's not true, the world will think that we have withdrawn first.
It will be India's victory in an international fora, much to the embarrassment of China in their own territory. And hence wisdom prevailed on them, and they eventually accepted what was suggested by the External Affairs Minister right at the very beginning.
The breakthrough between the two big countries, India and China, is a great message for both the countries. It is a very happy situation that both countries have agreed to withdraw their forces from the Doklam Plateau. This message will go that both such big countries can solve their problems among themselves without involving any nation like UNO and other countries also.
Ashish, coming back to you now, and speaking of how we saw truce between both these nations where the Doklam issue is concerned, like we said, very important. Prime Minister, I think, goes on the 3rd of September for the 9th BRICS Summit in China. But it was at the highest, topmost level where the negotiations and talks have taken place, because at the military level, I think, we could not achieve any sort of consensus, isn't it?
Yeah, very much on the expected line. See, the army here in India is exactly executes what is told by the government. They do not work independently and separately from the government. There were a series of meetings, I'm told around 4 to 5 different rounds of meeting in the second week of August, that until the third week of August as well. So on the second and third week of August, starting from 8th of August, the brigadier rank officer meeting, the major general rank officer meeting, and after that there were a series of meetings, including on the Independence Day. These meetings failed completely to see any solution between the two forces. So what was done is, through the diplomatic channel, which was already on for last 2.5 months, that was utilized. A lot of pressure was put, a lot of engagements that were done, and finally yesterday at the topmost level, to an extent of Prime Minister's office and the National Security Advisor's office, this truce has been achieved between India and China, and both the armies, the Indian Army and the Chinese PLA, have been conveyed about their government's decision. What is important here is to understand is the way Chinese were playing psyops, the psychological warfare. Indian government responded in a very mature manner. Instead of reacting in media, giving statements every day or every alternate day, that was the case with the Chinese government, media and military. What the Indian government did is remained silent, and it spoke officially and only when it was required. Whenever Chinese accused India of something, the Indian government responded through the MEA, through the MOD, or whichever language or the domain the Chinese were speaking in. The Indian government very smartly and maturely played the psyops war, the psychological war. The China realized that economically they will be the one who will bear the more brunt. For example, government never officially announcing that the Chinese goods would be boycotted, but the RSS did it. A lot of leaders from RSS started raising these slogans to boycott China, and the Indian citizen, the Indian population appeared more prepared for it. That if required, if the Indian army goes for war against Chinese army, the Chinese goods would be boycotted. And in those examples is where China realized that they will bear the brunt. Military-wise, the Indian Navy, now since the truce has been achieved, we can reveal to our viewers that the Indian Navy was playing a more crucial role. The entire focus was on army because of the Doklam standoff. But the key of the military domain solutions against the China was somewhere in maritime domain. And that's exactly China realized, that we may not be as big an army as China, we may not be as big an economy as China. Yes, we are the fastest growing economy, but volume wise we may not be as big as China, but we know where to choke that dragon. And that's exactly what they realized, and they had to take a step back, and the Indian government in a very mature manner has agreed upon this de-escalation and this demilitarization aspect of this standoff site and Doklam.
All right, we're going to leave it at that for the moment. Ashish, thanks very much for joining us. Indeed, it's the maturity in India's diplomacy that we've seen this standoff finally coming to an end. Ashish, thanks very much for joining us for the moment with those latest details there coming in, where India, of course, making its stand very clear where the Doklam issue is concerned.